While it's of course very important to understand what can be protected by copyright, it's also equally important to know what is not subject to copyright. So in this lecture, we're going to discuss what is not copyrightable. So we already know that copyright does protect original works in the cultural and artistic domains, and originality here is another requirement that I'm going to discuss in another lecture. But originality presumes that if a work has been created by different people, then it will obviously never be the same. Although of course it can be quite similar to the other work. But as we all know, the threshold for protection is so low that even mundane works can be protected. So what matters is that as long as one work has not been copied from another work, then the requirement of originality is going to be satisfied. But what about the situation that where a work has been created by somebody, but it's so simple that if anybody else were to write or attempt to write that same thing, then it's going to end up looking more or less like a copy of that work. So let's say that you type 2 plus 2 in your laptop and I also type 2 plus 2 in my laptop. And if we both have used the same font size and the same font style, then this could be taken as an example of a work that is so simple that no matter who writes it, that is, no matter who types it, the work is going to appear more or less alike. So this kind of work is not going to be covered by copyright because there is a lack of originality. And hopefully this is clear to you. There should be no problem in understanding why this kind of a work is not going to be covered by copyright. So even though the requirement is that two works can be quite similar to each other, but they will be protected by copyright as long as one work has not been copied directly from the other. However, if two works are not just similar but are actually identical to each other, then the requirement of originality is not going to be fulfilled. Now let's come to the more interesting point, which is regarding the title of a book or an article, or even the title of this video, for example. According to the current law, the titles of articles, books, videos, or anything for that matter is generally considered to be not subject to copyright. That is, titles are not copyrightable because of the fact that usually titles tend to be too short. Now I know you're going to be thinking this is just not fair, but like it or not, this is the law as it stands currently. And please note that even if you look up the relevant copyright laws in your countries, please note the fact that most of the time the copyright laws, that is the legislation, is not going to explicitly say that titles are not copyrightable. So you won't find a specific section that states that titles of work are not copyrightable. But that doesn't mean that they are, because as a matter of practice, titles are basically excluded from copyright protection. And once again, it's a different matter altogether whether they ought to be excluded, whether they should be excluded or not. But the purpose of this short lecture is just to provide you with general guidance as to what is not copyrightable. Okay, so other than titles, what else is not copyrightable? Well, as a general rule, if you're having difficulty deciding whether something is going to be protected by copyright or not, always apply the general rule, which is that copyright is usually meant to protect only expressions of ideas and not ideas themselves. So this means that any facts, for example, historical information, historical facts, cannot be copyrighted. Nobody has a right over history. And the same goes for any piece of current information. Like I said earlier in my previous lecture, that 10 different articles can be written about the same piece of information, just as we have hundreds, in fact thousands of books written on the same historical events. And other than this, always remember that copyright never extends to anything that is abstract. For example, if you have just thought about a superb idea for a new TV program, this is not going to be protected by copyright, but the way the idea for that show is going to be developed, and if it gets approved and actually comes on TV, then the way it is going to be played out on TV is going to be protected by copyright. So I repeat, anything abstract, that is a mere idea, is not copyrightable. And let me just add to this list by saying that even mathematical concepts and mathematical formulae are not copyrightable. So the key to identify what's not copyrightable is to be able to differentiate between a mere idea and an expression of an idea.